Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a business strategy that looks amazing on paper. It seduces companies with this promise of steady, predictable revenue, but so often, it ends up destroying them from the inside out. It's called Servitization, and as we're about to find out, it's a much more dangerous game than it looks.
Okay, so let's get right into it. On one hand, you have the promise of servitization, which, let's be honest, looks like the holy grail for any modern business. Stable, recurring profits. Who wouldn't want that? But then, you look at the reality. For corporate giants like GE and Xerox, that golden promise turned into a total firestorm of decline and chaos. So, how does the dream turn into a nightmare?
And that really is the central mystery we're going to solve today. What went so wrong? I mean, why does this idea, which seems so brilliant, so often lead to absolute disaster? The answer, it turns out, is way more fascinating than you might think.
So this brings us right to what we call the servitization paradox. It's this fundamental clash between what looks perfect in a spreadsheet, those nice, clean, upward trending charts, and the messy, chaotic reality of the real world. Why does this quote-unquote genius idea so often just fall apart?
To really solve this puzzle, we have to look for clues. And the best place to find them? Well, it's in the stories of the huge companies that actually tried to walk this path. Some made it, and, well, a lot of others didn't. So let's open up the case files. First up, General Electric. Now, GE made this massive aggressive shift. They went from just selling a product, like a jet engine, to selling an outcome. In their case, it was something called power by the hour. The airline doesn't even own the engine. They just pay GE for the time it's actually running. Sounds smart, right?
Well, what looked brilliant on paper turned into a trap fast. You see, those service contracts started to cannibalize or eat away at their new engine sales. Then, when the market took a nosedive, those long-term guarantees they'd made became massive financial anchors, just dragging the whole company down. The entire system was just incredibly fragile, and eventually, it shattered.
Okay, next up, Rolls-Royce. They were actually the pioneers of power by the hour for jet engines. Now, you might think their story is just a simple success, but the truth is a whole lot more revealing. And here's the absolute key difference with Rolls-Royce. Their success was not natural. In the beginning, their cash flow was all over the place, totally volatile. So what they do? They moved slowly. They put an incredible amount of hands-on control into the system, using heavy data analytics and really strict contracts. They didn't just find stability, they had to build it piece by painful piece. Now, let's talk about Xerox. We all know them for selling copiers, right? Well, they shifted to selling document management services and these pay-per-print deals. Seemed like a totally logical move for the digital age.
But what happened here is a classic case of self-destruction. The new service model was in a constant tug-of-war with their old product business. Yes, service revenue was growing, but it was absolutely killing the demand for new hardware even faster. It was pulling the entire company into this downward spiral.
All right, our next clue comes from IBM, which, believe it or not, faced a uniquely dangerous situation. As they moved from selling big hardware to providing services like consulting, they found themselves walking on the thinnest of tightropes. They were in what strategists call a saddle situation. Just picture trying to balance a marble on a horse's saddle. It's an incredibly fragile state where any little push sends you tumbling into chaos. IBM realized their hardware and service businesses just couldn't live together peacefully. So they made a radical choice. They surgically separated the two, selling off hardware divisions just to escape the trap. Finally, our last clue, Adobe. And this one's a rare bird. It's an example of a company that made this switch from products to services look, well, almost easy. They went from selling software in a box to their Creative Cloud subscription model. So why was it so smooth for Adobe? The answer is pretty simple, actually. Their customers were already demanding it. They wanted a subscription model. So there was no internal conflict, no real cannibalization. The whole system just naturally flowed in one direction. And this super smooth transition, well, that's our final and maybe our most important clue. Okay, so we've seen total failure, we've seen carefully controlled success, and we've seen smooth sailing. The real aha moment comes when you realize that one single framework can explain every single one of these outcomes. So what's the one thing that connects all these different stories? The answer is way simpler and honestly more powerful than you might think. It's a concept called a servitization regime. It's kind of like the hidden physics that secretly governs whether these business models live or die. So think of a regime as the underlying physics of a business model. It tells you whether the system, when you mash products and services together, is going to naturally calm down after a shock, or fly apart into chaos, or just wobble around like crazy. It's the system's default setting.
And here it is. This one table pretty much solves our entire mystery. You can see it all laid out, clear as day. GE and Xerox, they failed because they were operating in an inherently unstable regime. It was doomed from the start. Rolls-Royce was in an oscillatory one, which they had to wrestle into stability. IBM was on that super fragile saddle, and Adobe, they just got lucky. They were in a stable regime from day one. The final outcome was basically baked into the DNA of their business model.
And all of this brings us to the final verdict, the one big, crucial takeaway from this entire investigation into why this super seductive strategy fails so often.
And this quote just nails it. The strategy itself isn't a bad idea. The problem is that companies leap into it, assuming that their new combined business model will just work. They assume it will be stable by default. But as we've just seen, stability is often the rare exception, not the rule.
So here's the ultimate takeaway. You can't just assume a servitized business is going to be this strong, solid structure. More often than not, it's a fragile house of cards. Real, lasting success, like we saw with Rolls-Royce and IBM, it requires actively building for stability. You have to govern it, control it, and sometimes you have to radically restructure the whole company to make it work.
And that leaves us with one final crucial question to think about. Is the business model that you're most familiar with, maybe even your own, truly stable? Or is it just fragile in disguise? Because as these corporate giants have shown us, what looks like a fortress on the outside might just be an illusion, waiting for the right shock to reveal the chaos hiding underneath.